everybody, and welcome to Crypto Monday SanJuan Virtual Edition. I am your host, Pedro Rivera. I have a friend of mine here as our special guest and one of the original cypherpunks and the ex-chief security officer for the Tezos Foundation. We have Mr. Ryan Lackey in the house. Give him a round of applause, you guys, for Mr. Ryan Lackey. So, Mr. Lackey, why don't you go on ahead and introduce yourself, sir, for those who are unaware who you are, and just tell them a little bit more about your background and what you know about this space.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ryan Lackey. I've been involved in computer security since finding the cypherpunks mailing list back in 1993, 1994. I tried to do some electronic cash stuff back in the 1990s before this was really easy to do. I moved to a Caribbean island, not Puerto Rico, Anguilla to our east, and was working on some stuff back in 1998, offshore data haven, defense contracting, and then some startups. And then most recently, I was the chief security officer for Tezos Foundation, which was interesting because it's a new blockchain that was launched at the same time as it had a large fundraiser. So we had to figure out how to secure a large quantity of a crypto token that had no existing custodians. So it was a question of securing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of a crypto token on a new platform before anything was built, and then working with that as it grew to hundreds of millions, $500 million, $800 million worth of crypto tokens. It was a pretty interesting challenge, lots of technical problems to solve, and making it easy to use and seeing what all the failures are with some previous efforts that people had made where funds were either frozen or lost due to mistakes that people made in smart contracts and things. So it was definitely a fun thing. And I've been involved in helping people with ransomware and a bunch of other crypto-related computer security issues, as well as helping them figure out how to secure their own people that we don't want to trust a third-party custodian and want to have long-term crypto safety for their assets. And I moved to Puerto Rico a couple of years ago, and I live here, and it's a great place to live.
Yeah. Puerto Rico's a pretty dope spot, man. And we got guys like you, joining us, and it's incredible how the network is just growing exponentially, and you see it even more so now. I mean, through the pandemic, obviously, social activities and the gatherings will obviously cut back tremendously. However, what we've seen is that there was a good base and a solid group of individuals here, but even more so now. You're seeing a lot of people exiting the cities in the United States, so it seems like it's a really great time for guys to come down to Puerto Rico and join our community with a lot of the world leaders that actually live here. So with that being said, I want to plug our sponsor, Mr. Giovanni Mendez. So you can reach Giovanni Mendez at geo.tax and just mention Crypto Mondays, and you'll get some discounts on your services if you're interested in moving yourself or your family down to Puerto Rico and your business. He can tell you how to optimize your tax structure to make sure that you're keeping more of the money that you actually earn. And that's huge for guys that live in places like New York and California. You can essentially double your income by the tax savings, and then the quality of life, the standard of living will go down in comparison to some of the more expensive cities. So with that being said, Ryan, I don't want you guys to just kind of brush over some of the things that Ryan just said, because I mean, this fucking guy, he's like extremely humble and very nonchalant about both his background and some of the things that he's accomplished and things that he's done. But let me just back up. This guy was actually one of the cypherpunks and one of the original people on the Satoshi's mailing list. So Ryan Lackey has literally been in this industry since the beginning. In fact, before the beginning. As he did mention, he's been working on digital currencies prior to actual Bitcoin. And so to have someone that's been that involved in the industry and have them as a resource in our network, I am honestly truly blessed, and I'm grateful to have you. Now, the level of expertise that you actually have in this particular issue, dealing in security, is honestly, there's not many people who can say they've been responsible for a higher dollar amount of digital assets than Ryan Lackey has with Tezos Foundation. I mean, you guys raised $600 million, if I'm not mistaken, on your ICO, and then that ultimately ballooned to over $1 billion. Am I correct?
It was $232 million at time of the fundraiser, which then went up as Bitcoin went up. So it was about $600 million, plus the XTZ tokens, which are also worth a comparable amount. So, yeah.
So that's an incredible amount of money. And obviously, with that amount of money, you're a huge target for, security breaches. And it was your job, it was your responsibility to keep that money safe. And something that you told me earlier today, it just kind of increased my opinion about you. I mean, I have a pretty good idea of your moral fiber and conduct since we've known each other. You're a very honorable and trustworthy individual, obviously, right? If Tezos Foundation will trust you with that amount of money. It's something you said today when I asked you, how did it feel to have like control of that much money? I mean, you had literally $500 million in wallets that you were actually designed to control, and your response was stressful. And it was like, it was the most honest, and it to me made the most sense, because the level of responsibility associated with that would be stressful to somebody who actually cares, right? And someone who's not negligent of their responsibilities. So with that being said, I wanted to talk about scams, right? And just basically people being taken advantage of in the internet. It's something that's actually taken place, unfortunately, in our community several times recently here in the past couple of months, with actually my own identity, the irony of this. So there's a platform, Telegram, who's extremely popular in the cryptocurrency world, right? There's several reasons why that's the case. My personal reason, I think that it's so popular, it's because it gives you kind of the ability to banter back and forth with other people that are interested in said topic that you are, which is a little different than other social media platforms that are more, like for instance Facebook. I guess people banter back and forth, but it's more related to a post than actual and community discussing certain types of activities. So but with that, Telegram has some serious flaws that allow people to essentially just make profiles that look very similar to yours and reach out to people via DM. And being that they can just basically take your picture right off of your profile and then use that same picture, people who are kind of like uneducated won't know. So what's happened to me is actually, you've had several people utilize profiles. Like for instance, I'm at Blockchain Pedro on Telegram, which is spelled exactly how it sounds, BLOCKCHAINPEDRO. However, you'll see things like blockchain, but the L in the block is spelled with either an I, a capital I, so it looks very similar to an L if you look at it quickly, a one, or they'll put blockchain Pedro one, and people don't realize it's not me. And they'll reach out to you and they'll say, hey, do you want to invest in my new mining project, or some, outrageously well thought out? Unfortunately, some of these scams are extremely elaborate. They'll put up dummy sites on the internet, have links they send you to check stuff out. And you think you're actually investing, or even potentially sometimes they'll just ask you to borrow money. They'll claim some story like I'm traveling and I ran out of cash and I need some, to exchange some of my Bitcoin. I don't have my wallet on me. And I'm amazed. I get these messages all the time about people reaching out to them, utilizing my profile or a version of my profile that they've recreated. And unfortunately, they get people to send them money. So over the past couple of months, and I'm grateful that I have friends that love me and that just honestly would just pretty much support things that I do, and they think it's something I'm doing, and just like, okay, say, just send me the address and I'll send the money. But unfortunately, the things that have resulted, unfortunately, from that is scammers have gotten away with a pretty amount of money, and it's just continuing to happen. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do to protect ourselves with that, Ryan. What do you see from that?
Sure. I mean, those sort of phishing and impersonation scams have been a problem on the internet for a long time. I mean, back when PayPal was new, it was a popular thing to do, to send the same kind of thing of, hey, I've lost my wallet in this foreign city, come send me $100 or something. And the problem with crypto is that it's irrevocable and final transactions, so there's no way to back out the transaction. And as a result, it's a much more attractive thing for people to do. If it was just PayPal, they'd have to get the money off of PayPal somehow, and PayPal could reverse it. So they're sort of using the one of the strengths of crypto, that it's a final settlement against it to cause problems for people. Social media impersonation is an issue for everybody. There's a lot of people who have like fake LinkedIn profiles for high-level corporate people that are set up, and people sending or soliciting information from people on that basis. All sorts of bad stuff happens there. I mean, the only thing you can really do as a 100% thing is just to be always suspicious and verify everything. But even then, you do have some risk. So, I mean, a good basic principle is to limit your risk by not keeping large amounts of crypto around that you can use to make transfers on quick basis like that. So you would, I mean, it's one thing to lose like a bunch of Satoshis. It's another thing to lose a Bitcoin. So if I put a lot of scrutiny if somebody's asking you to send them like 5 Bitcoin to make some investment versus somebody saying, can you cover some like mining fee or some, or a transaction fee or something like that. So maybe be more cautious as the amounts go up, but just be suspicious of something that's out of the ordinary. I mean, I certainly have friends on the internet who, if they asked me for like a small amount of ETH or something to do gas fees for something, I would send it to them because I know them and it makes sense. But yeah, I would just be careful with that. And yeah, social media impersonation, you want to, as soon as you see one of those fake profiles up on something like Twitter or Telegram, one of these other systems, you want to appeal to them to get it shut down, because it just keeps on victimizing people as they, you can have a fake profile up there. You think you have one friend that reports it to you, probably means that 100 other people have seen it and potentially have fallen for it. And people are often embarrassed if they fall for that kind of thing, and they might never tell you. So, or they might not even know that it was a fake thing. They might think that they sent you money, and then you just are being kind of not very good about following up with them afterwards. So
yeah, it really is unfortunate, right? And then the back end of it is, again, I have some really cool friends that they're not concerned with a few $1,000s, right? And so these scammers, they get really educated on you, and they follow you on social media and kind of pay attention to the things that you do, and they kind of like make up stories that might coincide with something that sounds like you. And unfortunately, like people would just send money, and the back end of that, like when you said people are embarrassed by it, sometimes people don't even think about it. Like I had one guy that he sent like $4,000 and didn't tell me about it, and it was like a year later when he asked me about it.
yep.
And I had zero idea what he was talking about. I was clueless. And he was just like, yeah, well, look at your Telegram messages. And of course, it was through a secret chat from a fake profile, right, that disappeared. So that's the other issue, is they'll utilize secret chats they send you. I think that's probably another one that might be kind of like, a potential tipping alarm that, if someone sends you just a secret chat out of the blue, that's probably, a good idea that's probably not the guy. Maybe you want to check back with him publicly. But still, man, it's unfortunate because, like I said, thank God it hasn't happened to anyone who's like, like thinking it's a great investment opportunity and using like their rent money to try to pay their rent, and then all of a sudden expecting, it being something real because it came from me, and then all of a sudden it's not. Well, let me just be public about this. There are no get rich quick schemes in cryptocurrency, bottom line. Now, there is potential that you can make money really fast by timing, an investment, and it's skyrocketing over the course of a short period of time. But as far as something promising you returns, and anytime anyone promises you returns, number one, it's illegal. Number two is they don't know what they're talking about. No one can predict the market. So it's impossible to predict returns. So anytime someone's guaranteeing returns, generally speaking, that's usually a scam as well. And there's been larger scams and identity theft scams in terms of like various platforms, right? Investment type platforms that advertise returns and tell you, hey, you have compounding interest due to trading bots. Most famous one, BitConnect, right? That, a lot of people invested a lot of money into and then turn around and, obvious scam. And from that, you end up finding out that, unfortunately, people sometimes their own greed will get in their way, right?
Yeah, another big incident happened was when Ledger had their account database hacked from their sales site. It means that the attackers for this kind of stuff now have great lists of people who own ledger hardware wallets with their names, addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, all the stuff that makes it easier to impersonate what seems like a plausible request. So now people are getting spam messages from people that have that database that know all this information about them and say something like your hardware wallet needs a firmware upgrade, and sends them a very targeted message that says, click on, follow these official procedures and do all this stuff. And all they do is they change one URL out to be a bad URL that installs bad software on your computer. So companies are just as vulnerable to this kind of attack as individuals. And if there's a company that has a lot of contact with the crypto community, they really need to be aware of this kind of potential for problems if their account databases or any other, even marketing databases are hacked.
Incredible. So we're in the beginning of what most in the industry would consider the next bull run, and this one being one that is precipitated by actual smart money, so-called, by institutional investors and publicly traded companies and funds are starting to hedge their assets with crypto. What are the chances that these companies, who generally speaking are not great at harvesting data and keeping data safe, end up losing their assets by doing this?
Well, I think usually big companies are pretty good at protecting their own assets. The problem is they expose a lot of their counterparties to risk with things that they do. So, I mean, a bank is probably going to have a decent custody solution for their actual crypto and everything else. But if a list of all the customers of a given crypto wallet service or something becomes public, and all those users are targeted for an attack, and their accounts get drained through the user then doing something that the site or the bank or the institution can blame the users on, they're still out all the money. It doesn't really matter if it came from the bank or from the end users, and they're not going to make those users whole in most cases. So there's a lot of risk sort of like exported from these companies through their security practices. They might protect themselves, but they don't protect their customers very well. And you have a lot of that stuff where if a site does something with like the site has bad password management practices and lets users use weak passwords, reuse passwords, all that kind of stuff for a crypto wallet, or has a two-factor solution that's based on SMS only and doesn't provide better options, that exposes their users to heightened risk. I mean, I wouldn't really consider SMS-based two-factor to be a serious liability for like a regular website, like your news account, where all they're going to do is reset your subscription or something like that. But for a crypto account where you might be a targeted victim of something, and where you might, one of the problems with crypto and in the good markets is that you might protect something adequately for $500 worth of value, which is what it might be right now. But if the crypto asset goes way up, then it might be a $100,000 asset that suddenly requires a lot more protection than it did originally, and you don't necessarily change the security procedures that you had in place. One of the biggest issues around all this stuff is account recovery. So any sort of service is afraid that users might, or is aware that users might lose their passwords, might lose their devices, and they don't want to lose them as a customer, because if you tell somebody, hey, you lost your password, you're out of luck, go away, you're going to lose them as a customer. You might also have lawsuits and consumer protection stuff. So you need to provide a way for people, like end users that are imperfect in how they store data. They might lose a phone. All these things are very plausible. You need to provide a safe way for them to recover their account. But you also don't want to make that an easy backdoor for an attacker to come in and say, hey, I'm this person. I have all their info because I compromised, say, their Amazon account, so I can look at all their shipping addresses and credit card number, last fours, and all this other stuff, and use that to then escalate. Or what's more common is somebody gets their email account hacked, or gets their SMS or phone account redirected in some way, and that's used to attack these various things. So there's a lot of risk there. It's very difficult if you're running a custodial provider like a crypto exchange that holds funds for customers to have 100% security and usability for users. And they have to make a trade-off between how much risk they're willing to accept in the basis of making it a good experience for users versus how absolutely secure they want everything to be. And I think the big exchanges make a pretty good trade-off there. especially because they have like graduated thresholds for accounts, so you can't withdraw an entire huge account with just a password being hacked. But they do that because that's what happened in the past. A lot of these accounts did get pilfered and drained. So it's a very challenging problem. There's not like a silver bullet to solve that problem. But then you have the same problem if you hold crypto yourself in your own hardware wallet or software wallet or whatever else. You then need to protect it. You don't have some single point of contact you can go to tell you exactly what to do and to make sure you're doing the right thing. If you hold the funds yourself, it's totally up to you to handle it well. I mean, definitely there's best practices like using a dedicated machine or a hardware wallet, keeping your seed phrases and everything else backed up well, and having all that stuff prepared and having procedures in place for what happens if you lose access to certain services, forget passwords, or, I mean, in the long term, if you're going to hold crypto for your entire life, at some point you want to make sure that there's a solution so that whoever is going to inherit your assets might be able to inherit those crypto tokens that you've held on to for your entire life and never sold. It'd be horrible if somebody saved their entire life, had this big nest egg to leave for their family, and then they didn't either know about it or didn't have access to it. And that's definitely happened with some people that had died earlier than they otherwise were expecting to. They didn't have that stuff in place. So there's a lot of stuff you have to be aware of there. Just your regular desktop computer running normal software, web browser, is probably not a safe place to store seed phrases or raw crypto keys or even encrypted crypto keys that you decrypt on that computer for very large value crypto assets. I mean, the risk of somebody having a piece of malware running on your computer, otherwise hacking your machine is pretty high relative to the assets that are in there. And it's pretty easy to identify people that hold crypto. Like, I mean, even if you don't say that you hold like lots of BTC, you can identify people that are big in the crypto community. If you're always talking about crypto, you're probably somebody who has some level of crypto, so you're a target there. But yeah, the way to think about security is there's all the really easy stuff that you have to protect against, and people often think of some crazy super high risk, super high unlikeliness thing, like somebody's going to simultaneously break into their house and hack their phone provider and all these other things at the same time and use that to extort an exchange account or whatever. But in reality, a lot of it is phishing emails or social media impersonation, like you've identified, or just entering the wrong URL. Like if you always go to Coinbase.com and you typo that to some other address that somehow someone has typo squatted, or you click on an email that comes from Coinbase, everything looks exactly like a Coinbase email and has one bad URL in it, and you enter enough data there, you can have some serious problems. So all the easy stuff has to be done 100%. And then you have to start looking at the more obscure or difficult attacks as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot for, the average person to consider. This is what I like to tell people always, right? And you got to always remind people is that, if it's not your keys, it's not your coins, right? So the best way to keep your cryptocurrency safe is to actually keep it on a hardware wallet, right, off the internet. And in which case it would be extremely difficult for someone to get it from you. And, you keep what I would like to consider discretionary income or money that you're moving back and forth on the internet. Now, I personally am not a trader, so I don't know the best strategy for someone who enjoys trading would be. However, I would say that, for me, as someone who, believes in crypto long term, I just look at it like, again, these hardware wallets, they're pretty awesome if you know how to use them correctly. Make sure you get one from the official site. It's also a really important thing. We'll drop the link in the comments for actual legit site, ledger.com, because unfortunately, if you order off of Amazon, you may not actually know where it is you're receiving your product from. You just know it's distributed by Amazon, and unfortunately, that's another potential way you can get hacked. But yeah, the overall concept is that if you don't have the keys to the actual crypto, it's not your crypto. So there's something called Theo, who a good friend of ours, Luke Stokes, is the managing director of, they have incredible technology where they are taking these private keys, which essentially are long, ridiculous addresses that most people don't have a clue. And even if you do know crypto, you're not going to be able to read an address, right? It's like just a bunch of letters and numbers, and it's this long, and it just doesn't make sense. And I think that that's one of the things and one of the ways the industry itself has to go is where you make these wallet addresses identified by you as an individual. And I, right now we're not there, obviously. And right now, what I try to advise people is that when you get involved in cryptocurrency, you must recognize that you're essentially becoming your own bank. They are pros and cons associated with you becoming your own bank. Number one, first and foremost, is you get to keep a lot of your own money, right? Because bank charges a lot of fees, right? But for part of the fees that they charge you is because they have things like insurance, and your money's insured in the event you have an issue, more than likely you'll get recompensated. Crypto, not so much. You make the mistake of sending your Bitcoin to someone you didn't intend to, or if you send your Bitcoin to a Litecoin address, you may have a potential issue. No, you don't have, yeah, you have a real issue if you send your Bitcoin to your Litecoin address. Is there anything on the horizon that you can see potentially in the future that maybe can protect newbies from sending Bitcoin to the wrong coin's addresses?
Well, I think the not your keys, not your crypto argument is a good one for protecting against sort of external actors compelling you to do stuff, or the centralized services becoming bad in some way. But for if I had a person who had no crypto experience, needed to hold a tenth of Bitcoin or something, and was not really going to put a lot of effort into how they did it, I would probably tell them to use one of the big crypto exchange wallets with two-factor and everything else to hold it. Because right now, it does give you some protections that you don't get if it's your own key management. They do a pretty good job of protecting against external attacks. And your biggest risk, really, if you're using like Kraken, Coinbase, Gemini, any of these services, Binance, anything, is that your account itself will get hacked, not that the exchange will get hacked. Your second biggest risk is then that the exchange chooses to do something with your funds, or some external party tells that exchange, hey, this person now owes something, so you take the money out of the account. But I think that is a distant second to the risk of an individual losing their crypto through accidental stuff if they're not pretty serious about it today. I mean, maybe that'll get better in 5 or 10 years as the technology for self-custody for individuals gets better. Also, obviously, this isn't universal advice. If somebody is putting a lot of effort into how they manage their keys, how they do everything, then even today it's better to have it on their own control than it is to have it centralized. But there is definitely some challenges if somebody is doing self-custody. I think definitely addresses getting tagged by use. So wallets that maintain a list of addresses you sent to some other external trust network, stuff like Theo.
Contact list.
Yeah, contact lists. Keybase has done some pretty cool stuff there where you can show a proof, and it can be something where it's verifiable by third parties that you own certain assets or not. Unfortunately, they got bought out, so they're probably not going to do too much development on that front. But there's a lot of cool stuff there where, I mean, I would trust it. Like if you and 20 other people that we knew said, this is the address for Luke Stokes, I would probably trust that that's Luke Stokes' address without verifying with him. So it's sort of like a web of trust, the way PGP sort of used to work. And if I saw something where a single address had received like 20 Bitcoin from people over time, and no one had registered a complaint as it being the wrong person, I might trust that address more than if it was something where people just said this is the right address. It's a new address that has no history. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen over time to make it easier to do. I think definitely the user experience for crypto is pretty rough for a lot of people right now. I mean, even just in some ways it's gone backwards, like going from like 2014 to now because of fees and everything else to buy like coffee with crypto or whatever. So people haven't been focused on those usability challenges as much as they would otherwise have been when it costs appreciable fraction of the transaction for fees. But yeah, it's a big problem that needs to get solved. I would say services like Square and Venmo and PayPal and everything else have done a pretty good job of solving the centralized payment to an email address and linking it pretty well there. I mean, it's not perfect, but they do an adequate job there. If we can get to something that's even close to that experience for users sending crypto to each other, ideally decentralized, but even centralized today, that would be a big improvement over what we have.
I'll tell you what, there's always two ways to looking at things, right? So where you can see problems, you can also see a ton of opportunities, because the reality of the truth is the world's going digital one way or the next, right? Money's going to be digital. I was just having a conversation with someone I met this afternoon, which is why I was running late, by the way, and we almost got started late, but we made it on time. But I just met somebody that's an investor from Dorado, and we had like a late lunch together. And one of the things that we were discussing is how, what is the potential for growth of Bitcoin? And this is what his direct question was for me. He said, what type of market cap do you think Bitcoin could ultimately have? I said, what is the world's market cap? And he said, what do you mean? I said, add up all of the markets that you're familiar with, and what is that number? He said something like maybe $10 trillion or something like that. I said, well, that is Bitcoin's potential total market cap. And he says, how are you so confident? I said, well, I'll tell you what. Do you think money's going to be digital? He says, well, yeah. I said, okay. When it goes digital, what do you think it's going to be? I think it's pretty obvious, right? Especially with the consistent growth of Bitcoin, especially over the past year, where it's been, very heavily focused in institutional investors and the AKA smart money that's been buying into the program.
So once you start getting assets that are taken onto blockchains and everything else, you're going to have way more than $10 trillion. Because if you look at the total value of, say, commercial real estate in the world, that's in the hundreds of, I think it's like a $200 trillion market or something like that. So you can easily end up with
I mean, we just discussed this a couple of weeks ago with Andrew Keys, regarding Ethereum 2.0 and how Ethereum essentially would be the fabric of the internet. Whether or not that folds to be true and Ethereum stands the test of time or not, one thing's for sure: there will be a blockchain smart contract platform that will encapsulate all these assets. That's for sure. At some point in the very near future, not too far distant future. And with that being said, so with crypto established and not going anywhere, that means that these things that we talk about as hindrances or frustrations or problems are actually opportunities in the industry. So if you're looking to get involved in this space, the good thing to do is to find solutions to problems that exist. So while you're getting involved in the space and while you're actually educating yourself on various parameters of the industry, if you see a problem that's affecting you, chances are it affects a lot of other people as well. And that's generally speaking, the best types of businesses are the businesses that solve problems and real world needs. So again, crypto's not going anywhere. So these things that can be potentially, challenging for some people at this point are actually real world opportunities for other people at this point as well. So I wanted to ask you, right? Obviously, these types of social media impersonations are something that's elaborate from scams. What are some of the ways that I can basically know as to whether or not a project that I'm looking to invest in is a scam as opposed to an identity or impersonation? Like, how do I know if I'm looking down, say CoinMarketCap, or I'm, taking a look at some of these projects? What are some of the due diligence factors that a guy like you would look at when he would potentially be looking at an altcoin?
And the first thing would be make sure that you're looking at the official resources for that particular altcoin. You might trust like number 15 or whatever the current a coin market cap token is based on all the research you do. But if you end up going to the impersonator of that, then that's a problem. But yeah, the things I would generally look at are founding team or the operating team and everyone else. Are they anonymous? Are they known people? Look at their backgrounds, see if they're actively involved in the project still. I mean, a lot of people look at code repositories for things. It depends on the stage of the project. If it's a big operational project, like let's say you're evaluating like to be political, let's say Bitcoin Cash. You want to see what kind of use people are having in the world with it, and see what the wallets are like. Try using it.
He keeps going strong, man. He don't care what anybody say, man. I love you, Roger. We got to get you as a guest pretty soon here, man.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I would look at projects, see what kind of traction it's getting with actual users, and you can learn an awful lot by just installing the wallet, playing around with it yourself, seeing if there's any actual utility there, seeing if the links actually work to install stuff. Like there's a lot of sites that are flashy that have download links that just don't work anymore or haven't been maintained. The GitHub repository for the project to see how actively it's being developed. I would definitely judge a project a lot more by what they actually ship versus press releases. So look at that kind of stuff. But in a lot of cases, if you are looking at getting into something, it's probably something that's early, so that it might be in advance of a lot of deployment, because you want to have the appreciation if it goes up. So, or the benefit to you if you're adopting a new technology before everybody else uses it. Like one of the best things that if you don't have a lot of money, you can do is find projects that are early projects and become sort of a high-level user with them, familiar with them, learn. Like if you didn't have any money at all in 2012, 2014, had no money to put into Bitcoin, but all you did was learn how it worked and got pretty expert with the technology, you'd be probably ahead of a lot of people that had lots of money back in 2010, 2012, and potentially bought some amount of Bitcoin. Just having familiarity and expertise with the stuff is worth a lot. So I would just experiment with it. There's a lot of these systems that have small enough units that you can put like $10 into something and experiment with it and see how it works, and just sort of play around there. But I would trust things that have been delivered. Like if somebody says there's these 5 things we're going to do, and they deliver the first 2 of them, that raises the odds that they're going to deliver the 3rd, 4th, and 5th thing, versus they say we're going to do this huge thing that has no milestones at all, and eventually it's going to ship, and just trust us that it'll eventually ship, and they have no track record of shipping. So incremental progress and things like that are worth a lot. Also, like, do you actually like the people that are there? Like, are they generally, like, it's not really a secret that smart people are generally not complete assholes, unlike the people who are frauds and everything else. Like if you're a technically competent project that's working well, you might be busy, they might be maybe not native English speakers or something else. They're not really good at communicating, but they're still relatively civil or polite or reasonable. They're not like crazy people that you don't want to have any association with. And you probably don't win, even if it's a great project with horrible people involved. So I would judge things on that basis. I would also go for things that you have sort of a background in. So if there's like you have a lot of background in like commercial real estate, and there's some project that has a goal of putting commercial real estate on a blockchain and doing stuff like that, you're probably in a better position to evaluate, like, are they working with good companies in the field? Are they working with things? Than if it's like an entertainment project and you don't have any background in that. So things that you have some expertise in addition to the rest of the stuff is probably a good way to look at it. There's definitely projects that have people that are very big into hype and everything else, and they might not be good projects, but also projects that don't communicate at all. Like if they never give any updates on how things are going, or they never have, if it's always good news and never bad news, that's also a bad sign, I'd say, or whatever else. Like I would probably judge projects on multiple axes there.
No, that makes sense. That's a lot of good information. I want to try to touch on a couple of key things there, and just tell you some of the things that I'm always looking for when I'm looking at various projects. is number one, first and foremost, is the team. We live in a very digital world, and our space people work on the internet, right? So like if I Google Ryan Lackey, fuck, he's easy to know who he is, right? It's really, really, really fast. Doesn't take a lot, right? And so when like you just now recently, you and Tezos have amicably parted ways. So in the event you get involved in another project, knowing your reputation and knowing what you've been involved in, I don't care what that project is. My personal opinion is a guy like you is not going to get involved in something that's not going to work at this stage in your career. And you have a past history to look back, and it will give people comfort in knowing that. And that's what I look at when I look at other projects. Generally speaking, the number one go sign for me is, has anybody on their team on the C-level membership, have they been involved in another project that's been successful to this point? And that's usually a go sign right there. As soon as you see that a team member has been involved in another project that was successful, generally that one's going to work as well. Because that guy knows how to make something happen, and he's already been through a lot of things. Because as you know, it's not easy to make it, even when you make a lot of money, right? Or you raise a lot of capital. Now you're under a tremendous amount of responsibility to actually execute with that capital and produce, which in itself is not easy either. So there is the number one go sign for me, as I did mention, is always going to be the team. I look for a repeat offender, is what I like to call these guys, and they're guys that actually had already a hit in the industry. Now,
I have seen people that have had success in other areas of tech end up taking their reputation, and not doing a great job of it. So
no, they bomb face first here. It's two completely different worlds. Now, I will tell you that it's good to have a blend. And what I mean by that is have some team members that have some financial services experience outside, like generally speaking, like the traditional financial services world, and B, that these guys have someone on the team that also has been involved in the space and has some industry knowledge, firsthand experience, and relationships, right? Because a lot of times it's like anything else, it's the relationships that you have that can get you over certain hurdles and bottlenecks. But yeah, a couple of key factors. You always want to be sure you're dealing with the legit websites, and this is back to how people typically get scammed, is dealing with the improper URL. So what I advise people to do is generally bookmark your important URLs to your typical cryptocurrency pages. This way you never have to actually type the URL in, and you're not at risk of typing the wrong URL address in. And you want to keep that information very, very safe. I know you're not a fan of password managers.
I know I'm a big fan of password managers.
Well, you have some issues with it, but I think the password managers are actually one of the best ways that you can protect your information. The challenge is the initial entry to the password manager, as you do mention, is an actual password itself. So that's where there could be a potential security breach. However, they are generally speaking pretty safe and secure. Now, the other thing is, we have some questions from the internet I wanted to ask you about, see if this is something you're familiar with. Do you know anything about Kua Lian? Do you see the YouTube comment? And is their project a scam?
I don't know anything about the project.
Let me see if I can Google these guys pretty quickly. Let's see if we can get a little information on these guys. I don't know, Camila, but what I would imagine is like anything else. Do your due diligence. And I'll tell you what, just what I'm looking at off just Googling it, the first article that comes up is why Kulian is not a scam by the actual Kulian website. That does not make me feel good whatsoever. Legit projects do not need to put on their website why they're not a scam. So I'm just saying off the initial information, but let me look at what Reddit says. Yeah, no. Anytime that you go to guaranteeing returns, That's also an instant sign
Yep.
for, generally speaking, a Ponzi scheme. And you want to stay away from those types of projects. These projects usually have great marketing that appeal to people who have been, kind of, living check to check for quite some time. And they appeal to that type of personality and that mindset. And the unfortunate circumstance is that they have a great way of targeting and marketing to those guys, because that's a big percentage of the working population. And they, throw out a lot of promises about passive income and guaranteed returns and this and that. And the number one thing you want to look for, the number one thing that should send a red flag to you is this instant you see people promising high returns. That's not legal, and again, it's not ethically right, and it's not right at all, because you don't know what your returns will be on any investment. Have some targets, and you can potentially have a good idea of what something's going to potentially do, but you're not going to be able to tell somebody how much money they'll make on their investment in your project. So yeah, do you have anything else that you'd like to discuss, Mr. Lackey, pertaining towards the security?
Well, I think the number one risk for a lot of people is losing their funds, not even having them stolen from them. So the main thing I would do is make sure that people have, you like hardware wallets. I like hardware wallets, but they're not perfect. I've had hardware wallets catch on fire, break in various ways. What you really want is some sort of physical seed phrase written on paper or on metal or something like that, stored in safe places, ideally multiple safe places that are secure from other people getting access to them, as well as safe from getting lost. And you don't want to be the guy who had a bunch of crypto on his hard drive that failed, or his hardware wallet that somehow that hardware wallet itself broke or something like that. So number one threat that I would be worried about would be accidentally losing funds by not having enough copies of it. And it's easy to have multiple copies of your seed phrase and having them physically recorded in multiple places. And no backup system like that is worth anything unless you verify that you can actually recover from the backup. So what you want to do is take that seed phrase and pre-import it into a hardware wallet and see if the funds are still there. Because I've seen probably 10 times more people lose their funds through some mistake or through some disaster of some kind than have them stolen.
What about all the tokens that get sent to wrong addresses? Do you envision a way sometime in the future that there'll be a solution to recover those tokens, or they're just lost forever in Satoshi land?
Yeah, I think the best practice is to send test transactions and verify them with the person to make sure they've been received and everything else. It was crazy. I don't know if you saw the US DOJ or whatever had seized a huge amount of funds from that Silk Road guy. They had like $1 billion worth of BTC, and they sent a 1 BTC test transaction recently to show off they like a $10,000, $20,000 is nothing to them. Yeah, I always send test transactions, verify they're received. Obviously, that's different with systems that roll their addresses on every receipt, so that you're privacy protecting everything else. But yeah, if you send it to the wrong address, sometimes you can contact the address. If it's just an incorrect address of a different person, sometimes you can contact the person and get the funds sent back. But otherwise, I think you're kind of out of luck. There's systems like proof of stake systems where you could potentially have an agreement among all the users that any funds that have been lost, you can verify they've been destroyed, can get restored to users after some period of time. But I don't know of any systems that have that in place now. Like the most famous things we've had have been like the DAO incident and things like that, where the problems happened and they got reversed. But that was only through a very large sort of external to the network action. And I don't think you're really going to see that happen if you accidentally send a small amount of funds, maybe a large amount of funds for you, a small relative to the network, to the wrong address. That's a problem. But it speaks to the need for the user experience to be good. Like, you can send wires to the wrong address now too if you're doing like a bank wire and typo a number or something. And sometimes the funds are really, really hard to recover or almost impossible to recover. So same thing happens in the traditional world.
Well, we want you guys to stay safe, and we want to keep you safe. So one of the things that we're working on, and we're going to announce it on the YouTube live channel for you guys, is that we're creating a set of educational videos that we'll be producing in the studio related to Bitcoin basics, taking you from base level knowledge to taking you from no knowledge to base level knowledge. So I know that lately we've been receiving a lot of attention and we're getting a lot more new members to our community, both online and both here in Puerto Rico and globally. And obviously the market's bubbling, so people are starting to become more interested in crypto. Maybe even their bank is starting to offer crypto products and they're hearing about it. They're seeing the price raise and they're interested in the market, but they don't really know where to go to get the information. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a series of videos targeted at people who have no knowledge of cryptocurrency, giving basic information on what it actually is, what blockchain is, what is smart contracts, what is a hardware wallet, what is a software wallet, and then ultimately what is an exchange and how to use it, right? So then we'll have some videos related to security. Maybe my guy Ryan Lackey will help us out with some of these things, and we'll get some things going for you guys, great educational material. So stay tuned for that. That's coming soon. So one thing I definitely want to chat with you guys about. See behind me? You see all these toys up here on this table? You see they're a bunch of little girl toys, right? I'm obviously not a little girl and I obviously don't play with dolls, but I'm extremely grateful, blessed, and honored to be partnering with the Integro Foundation to doing a Three Kings toy drive here in Puerto Rico for various charities related to children on the island. So if you guys want to participate, because we are in the beginning of a long bull run, and it's a great time for you guys to show how much you care and appreciate and donate some of that crypto that you guys have made this year to this toy drive. Now, we've partnered with a couple of charities that have been vetted by the Integro Foundation. Integro Foundation does an incredible job of vetting all the various charities on the island to make sure that they're working with the charities that do the most impact with the least amount of money. And they do an incredible job of it since they've been active on the island. I'm always grateful and blessed to work with these guys on everything they do. And they've identified some really good causes, from children's with disabilities hospitals to children's orphanages to one for boys and girls clubs. It's various parts of the island that have still been damaged from Hurricane Maria and the earthquakes. And you guys, we need your love and support. So if you want to donate toys themselves, they have various lists of toys that you can purchase and send, and they have to be very, specific in regards to which charity you're donating for, because in particular, if you're going to donate for the Children's Hospital, they have to be things, because those are kids with special needs and they could potentially swallow some of the toys. So please be mindful of that. Or if you just prefer to donate cash or crypto, look in the link in the comments section and go directly to the Integro Foundation page and donate to the Three Kings Toy Drive for a partner by Crypto Mondays. And donate your cash or your crypto. It's a 501(c) nonprofit, tax-free. And, we'd love and appreciate your support, and reach out to me, Blockchain Pedro, and see if there's anything I can do to help you guys out to facilitate in this. And I'm grateful for you guys all the time. So Ryan, I appreciate you joining us on this episode tonight. I'm excited about what we're building here in San Juan and having you as a part of our community. I feel incredibly blessed and fortunate, and I think that it's beyond time that we begin really documenting what we're doing here in San Juan and what we're doing to build the community, and the kind of morals, ethics, and ethos that we build our tribe upon, and how we want to expand that in conscious method moving forward. So that's it for me here, Ryan. I don't know if you have anything else to add, if you got something you're working on, you want to discuss, or you want to drop something out there. I know you're the humblest of guys. Is there anything out there you want to discuss, anything you're looking at, you're excited about?
I think there's a lot of exciting stuff out there, but nothing to share. But it's great that we're doing this, a lot of stuff to help Puerto Rico with the various charity projects and development projects.
No, it's awesome. It's awesome, man. So I appreciate you guys' help and assistance, man. That's it for today. We're going to sign off. Crypto Monday San Juan, Ryan Lackey. You guys stay connected. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Telegram. Join our community at Crypto Monday SanJuan. Drop me a message. Let me know when you're coming to Puerto Rico. We'll show you guys around. We'll get you guys acclimated into the community. We got a tremendous network of people to receive you guys, as we know that the majority of the United States will be leaving cities and looking for more tax favorable options moving forward. I want to thank you guys again, all of my guests, for joining us here today. The guys who provided us with questions and comments. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you guys. That's all for tonight. We'll see you guys next week. Please, 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 if I've ever provided you with any value in your life since you've known me, please donate to the toy drive. Please, please, please. I don't care if it's $10. I don't care if it's $20. We want to show our community cares. And you guys, my friends that are watching that have bigger wallets, I expect to see bigger donations. And again, we'll show you guys, we'll track all the donations. Integro Foundation does a great job of identifying all these various charities and exactly where your money's going. And we'd love for you guys to come down and visit some of these charities and actually spend some real time and actually try to acclimate yourselves with these community members. So we appreciate you guys. You guys have a beautiful night. God bless and good night.